Hey everybody, I'm going to talk about a topic that is actually very nuanced, but I've had several experiences that were similar, so it can help people with their own contact situations. And what I'm going to discuss is ET approach, how they approach, common ways that I've seen it happen with my own experiences, to help you understand how patient and concerned they are about fear and safety and making sure you're ready, but not just that you're ready, that they're safe. So the two experiences I'll share are Sasquatch experience and my friend Wasp. Now, the Sasquatch experience happened in the Appalachias. I had started working on my communication skills, and I started seeing a Sasquatch come in to my mind. And when I was working through meditation and astral travel with ETs, they started saying, hey, you need to go to the mountains and work with these beings that are out there. And here it was a Sasquatch. And so I put together a list of places to go. There was one place I did not want to go because it was too close and wasn't far enough away, and I didn't have familiarity with it. I had like 20 places on my list in the Appalachias. They went, you're going to cross every single one of them off and you're going to go to that one place. I went, no, I'm going to these other places. Anyways, you want me to meet something, I'm going to go here where I'm comfortable. Yeah, crossing off 20 things later, that place is the place I went to. And I am very happy for it too. I went out there one night, I hiked, I drove into the mountains. So I was already 2-3 miles away from probably the nearest house. And then I hiked another 2 miles. I think the camping site is 2 miles in, down a very rocky, rugged trail that is very difficult to backpack through, which is nice because it's secluded. It means nobody's ever there. Very, very few times have I ever run into people on that trail. And I went out there and I spent the night, and there were a lot of things that happened. The night of communication, I had to hike in and out several times. Now a 2 mile hike in the woods, if you can walk, I can walk over 3 miles an hour, and it takes me that hike is about 50 minutes, and it's a little less than 2 miles. It's about a 50-minute hike with a pack on, and I went in, forgot my fire starter. They wanted me to cold camp. They worked with me a lot on cold camping, and there's a reason for that. I'll get to that. Worked with me a lot on it. Do not take fire, do not take lighters, do not take all this other stuff. And I was like, the fire's safety. You got to protect yourself. Fire is safety. I was forced to forget my fire tools, my lighter, my fire stick. I have a fire stick that you can just kind of like magnesium stick. Forgot it all, had hiked in, set up camp, went to start a fire, and was like, oh my God, I forgot what I needed. And I'm not a Boy Scout. I'm not going to rub two sticks together and try to do something. So hiked back out to the car, found it, hiked back in, spent a lot of time just going back and forth and exhausting myself to get this campsite set up. And normally it would be okay, but this was it was a rough trail. I actually cut my shoes on it at one point on some of the rocks because they're just sharp, and there's no smooth area to walk on. But anyway, night comes, and the fire's going, and I lay down, and I'm looking up at the stars, and I see something jet across the sky, and I'm like, was that a UFO? Because of course I'm out there to see stuff, and my energy, the energy around me instantly, boom, it's higher, way higher, and I feel thump thump thump, almost like three things just pop into existence around me. There was one so if I'm facing, there was one straight ahead of me when it happened, when I saw the UFO. There was another one about I don't know what, to my right, off to my right. For some reason I'm having trouble thinking of mathematical degrees, which happens when I do this 5D stuff. But off to my right, and then a little farther right, there was another one. And now the one farther right, I could tell is the one I had been telepathically talking to. But the problem was, there was a really big Sasquatch standing right in front of me, off in the distance in the bushes. And he had, you've heard the stories of red eyes. He had the red eyes. He was very aggressive. He was very intimidating. And he had an energy that I would, first time encounter, I'm running the hell out of the woods. But Kunlai, who is very, so first of all, this warrior energy too is very silverback gorilla-esque looking, is the way I would put him, human crossed with a silverback, but big. I'm 6'2", he's 2-3 feet taller than me. Kunlai is off to the other side almost, and she's a big brown Sasquatch, looks more like a cross of Chewbacca and a gorilla, and a human, but very, very gentle energy, very kind, gentle, teaching, wise energy. Not that the other one wasn't any of that stuff, but he was a warrior, he was a guardian. And I'll get to that in a second. In the middle of them, way off in the distance, was a very young energy, very young Sasquatch standing there and just peeking from behind a tree. And I couldn't really understand why I thought I was coming to meet one. I was told I was coming to meet, I had this idea in my head. I'm going into the woods to meet a Sasquatch. I'm going to meet one Sasquatch. They kept saying, you're going to meet them. Trust the words that your guides say. Them is plural, not singular. So I'm sitting there, and it's crazy. I've got my staff. I always have a walking staff, a piece of wood that I carry with me. I've got all my equipment that I backpacked in, tent to set up. I've got all that kind of stuff. And I'm like white. My knuckles are getting white on this staff because I cannot express the amount of terror that runs through you when you have 3 enormous Sasquatches close to your fire. You just want to run or fight. And this was a trust building exercise. Kunlai was behind me, she kept saying trust, breathe, trust, breathe, things of that nature. And they never approached. What they did say, and what the warrior said, is if you come after me, I'm coming after you. He was there to protect the other 2. He was not there to harm, to hurt, but you could feel the intensity of who he was. And so when you see those other Sasquatches, it's not that they're there for malicious purposes. It's that they are there to protect the others. And he's not the first one I've run into, or the last one I've run into like that. He was there to protect the young one who was there to learn about interacting with humans. And Kunlai was there to teach me and the young one, I think she was a young female, to teach us how to interact with each other. And it was a lot of patience, a lot of trust, and a lot of me taking a staff, swinging it wildly in the air, going, don't you come closer. And, feeding the fire and all of that. Now, feeding the fire, I should say, I was cold camping I let the fire die down. There was a point in time, I think it was like, so this is closer to it was springtime. It was still getting dark a little bit earlier. Like 9 o'clock, I started letting the fire die down. And it's slowly dying. And Kunlai's out there, and she's like, just let it die. Just don't worry about it. Let it die. The more it dies down, the closer I will come. And I can see her actually in the distance walking closer, and then feeling the ground and stuff. You can actually feel, if you're sensitive and intuitive, you can feel into the ground and feel the vibrations of stuff pushing on the ground. Almost like if you were to put, try to, I don't know if there were horses running by and you put your hand to the ground and you could feel them. It's like that, but for an individual being that's close by. So I could feel them around moving, and I could see her kind of off in the distance, her energy, because it's dark out. There's I think it was a full moon maybe, but we're in the middle of the mountains, woods, trees, all that. She keeps coming around. Trust. Don't be afraid. Just be patient. Focus. And she kept saying, because I kept turning to the big guy. Like, I'll never forget. Like, every time she looked at me, I'm like, there is this guy standing here staring at me, red eyes. Like, I feel like I'm gonna get torn apart. And she'd be like, trust. Look at me. Just focus on me. Don't worry about him. He's here for our protection. Don't worry about it. Just trust. This is how it's done. And so we worked like that for quite a while until the fire almost died down. And after probably 2-3 hours of me white knuckling a staff and walking around, I was like, I'm done. I can't do this. I'm emotionally exhausted. I'm physically exhausted. I was physically exhausted already from going back to get my fire stuff that I was forced to forget because the whole idea was the cold camp. But it was emotionally intense. They never approached. If I said, please stop, they stopped. They never made an aggressive move. They never did anything to promote harm or viciousness or anything like that. The warrior energy was there. The teacher was there. The young one was there. Crazy to think about when you've never met them before. Or, well, I should say, I never put 2 and 2 together and remembered or acknowledged that I had met them before, because I had not this group, but I've met many throughout my life. And so sitting there around them was a very interesting approach to how they did it to build trust. And a lot happened. You can read about it in my ET Sasquatch Interdimensional book in more detail. There was a lot of comedy. One of them, the warrior, was playing jokes on me, which did not help at all. Did not help. When they're sending stuff and scaring you with the stuff, and then he's laughing about it, being playful in a harmless way. But there was a lot that happened that night, and it was all about building trust. So I did not get to sit by, like, exactly with them, but they were all around me. And I was there, and they were all building trust, patience, trust, no harm. Don't fear us. Let the fire die down. Let everything be okay. Get used to it. That's how they approach it. Baby steps. When I said I was done, they went, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, I can't do this anymore. I'm just physically and emotionally exhausted." They're, "Are you sure?" "Yes." So I talked to Kunlai telepathically for about 15 minutes. Then she stayed. They all stayed for, 10, 15 more minutes just to make sure I was done. And I just went, "I'm done. I'm putting the fire back on." I threw stuff on the fire, and they went, "Okay." And they backed off into the woods and disappeared. You do not have to fear approach by these beings, for the most part. I will clarify, for the most part. Like humans, there are good and bad, but most of them are good, and most of them are going to try to build trust with you. And just because they have red eyes or they feel aggressive does not mean they are. So that was the first Sasquatch thing with Kunlun, how they approach. The other approach is wasp. Wasp is a mantid, not a mantis, a mantid. They're just a type of ET. So, and I say mantis-like sometimes because they do have features that are like that, but they are not mantises. They're mantids, M-A-N-T-I-D-S. So he found me in the woods. Actually, on that very same mountain, there's a stream at the bottom, and I was giving an offering, and he was in the trees, off in the distance, and watching me. I found this out later in meditation when I met him, because I didn't know how he found me, and then he showed me that, and he noticed my conscious energy, my spiritual glow, all that stuff that draws them to us. And so he reached out and came to me in meditation. Now, I don't remember, because I've met a lot of these beings, I don't remember if he's the one. There was one that I was walking one night, and an orb flashed by horizontally, not a trick of light. Like I tried to recreate it, flashed by, the energy rose. And about 500 feet up or so, I continued walking, and this just giant mantid-like creature that reminded me of something out of Stargate or Starship Troopers, the bugs in Starship Troopers. This being like that came running out of the woods, out of the residential area, like, you can see me, how are you? Super excited. That never, it's like some of it's confusing because I don't know who is who at times when I was first doing this stuff. But that was one approach. It ran up and was like watching me. Wasp did not have that approach. It was very peaceful, more peaceful, I guess. And now that I think about it, I don't know if I have the timeline. I'll have to look at my book and see how the timelines are, but because there were a couple of them around. And so Wasp met me. We communicated through meditation, and I really wanted to meet him, like to actually physically meet him because we were talking so much. And he said New Mexico. When you go to New Mexico, I'll come there. And my Zeta friends and other ETs were like, yeah, we'll bring him. They actually ferry them around with their UFO technology. And so I go out to New Mexico, and I meet Radio, who's going to guide me through New Mexico, I call him a Zeta. And he's a Zeta. And he guides me. And we set up times where we're going to meet. And I get guided to places where I'm going to meet Wasp. And so we go up to the mountains, and I sit there. And I think before we got there was a desert setting where Wasp was going to come, and there were too many people around. There was too much going on. He didn't like the area. I do remember specifically a mantid walking over a dune at one point and just surveying the area and turning around and leaving and not approaching. And I don't remember if that was him. I don't think it was. But I went up into the Rockies to a place that I got guided to. And this is all in the Raven's Way book. This is the book on New Mexico where I met a whole ton of beings. And I'm sitting there and I'm exhausted, and I thought, they told me I wasn't going to stay long. I wanted to stay long because I wanted to hike the mountains, and I forgot about elevation sickness. I got to the point where I literally could not walk more than 30 paces from my chair without turning around, walking back, and just sitting down because I could not breathe. My body was exhausted. It was rough. Basically, I knew I'm sitting in a chair all night and I'm screwed. So I did exactly what we had trained for. I cold camped. I never had a fire. I camped for 3 weeks in New Mexico. Not once did I have a fire. every night was cold camping, every single night, no fire. People think that's crazy, and it's part of building trust with these beings and how I got them to approach. So they're out there, I feel them come in, and a being comes over the mountains, and it's really dark, I can't see much, but I can feel him out there, and he's big, and he circles behind me, and it turns out to be a Sasquatch. I actually get him to knock on a tree and communicate physically that he's there. And he basically walks in circles from, 100 feet or so away, and he's just checking to make sure there's no other people there, because it was a campground. But the way that I had gotten there, I picked a spot, and then all of the other spots around me, nobody else came. They were all on the opposite side of the campground where you couldn't really see. So he was making sure everything was safe and good. When he gave permission, all of a sudden this smaller, more frail being comes running over the hill and walking up, and comes up and stands there. And I'm I think I have my staff. I think that's, so again, if you read the book, the timeline in the book is correct. It's confusing in my mind because of how time works for me and how many of these experiences I've had. But I'm pretty sure I still had my staff at that point, and I was holding it. I had put my phone in the tent, and Wasp approached, and the Sasquatch is literally standing right in front of him, 50 feet away from me. But they won't come closer. First of all, the Sasquatch has no interest. He's just there as a protection type of measure. And radio's still in the ship, wherever the ship was. And so Wasp walks up and just stands there, and he won't approach. He's talking we're just standing there, and the whole thing is build trust, just sit here, just watch each other kind of thing. And I can feel radio getting frustrated. And some time goes by. Finally, they turn around, they get on whatever ship device they were using, and they're gone. And radio is super frustrated because he wants us to meet. And he's tired because Wasp is... The thing you have to understand about some of these beings, they approach slowly for a reason. They are approaching because of their protection, and they don't want people to know they're around, because there are the horror stories you hear about them being taken, about them having experiments and stuff. That's all true. They don't want that happening to them, so they have to make sure they are safe and they are trusting. And even though they might trust you, they still don't trust you until you're willing to trust them fully. And so they leave, and I'm talking to radio, and I'm like, what happened? How do we do this? Like, why didn't he come? And then Wasp pings in, and he's like, you had your staff. And I was like, really? And that's the reason he would not come closer, because I had a staff with me, which means, and I was like, well, I think I said, I wouldn't hurt you. And he goes, I know, but you could. And I just went, okay, I get it. I understand. I know where you're coming from. So then we went out to Utah, and they met me out in Utah, and he actually came closer. I went to an outcrop, sat where nobody could see me, and I had beautiful view of this valley and everything. And I think he came 2 nights in a row. I don't remember. I had a couple encounters out in Utah, but the last encounter, I didn't have my phone, I didn't have my staff, I just had a chair and some snacks. I went out and I sat there, and I was like, I'm just sitting here far away from my campsite. And he came up. He did not come close, but he came close enough that I went, can you throw a stone, just so I know you are actually there? He picked up a stone and threw it at me. Actually, first he telepathically hit me with a bug, which, when they do that, it hurts. Because they can telepathically link to insects and animals, and we can too. I've done it. I've watched birds fly. It's really cool. But the idea is they can telepathically link and get bugs to hit you. So like I'd be like, hey, can you show me you're there? And then this big beetle just goes smack and hits you in the face and flies off. And they'll pick the biggest bug they can find in the area. But I was like, okay, well, that's a bug. It could have just hit me. And I go, throw a rock. That's out of the norm. Just pick up a rock and throw it. And he's like, I don't know. Maybe people notice. I'm like, there's nobody around. And finally he goes, okay. And he picks up a rock and he throws it. And it lands by me. But the whole point of this is they approach in different manners. Some of them will bring multiples. Some of them will bring bodyguards. Some of them will want you to cold camp. Some of them will want you to have absolutely nothing with you. Now, the Sasquatches didn't care that I had stuff. They wanted me to cold camp. I think the light doesn't the bright light in the darkness. It's hard. Like even cold camping now, I know I can see in the dark, which is fascinating. I didn't know that before until I cold camped. I'm like, I can see in the dark, and you might be able to too. But the whole idea is we use lights and fire and artificial lights, and we blind everything. So I've seen the Sasquatches walk around in the daylight. Daylight doesn't bother them, but light at night does, and I think it's that effect, the focusing effect. Some of them will ask you to cold camp. Some of them won't care if you have. I had a hatchet with me. I had a staff. I had all this other stuff with me when the Sasquatches were around. They didn't care. And part of why they didn't care is because they had that big guy there that told me if I tried anything, he was coming after me. So they were very clear on that. But at the same time, they were clear that they're peaceful. It's basically, you come at me, I'm going to protect myself. And then there are others like Wasp who are going to be very cautious. It's going to take multiple meetings, and they are going to whittle you down until you have nothing on you. And even then, they're still going to be cautious because of experiences they've had, their family have had, their friends have had, in experiences with humans. So they approach in different ways. I've had others. I had one in New Mexico who just ran up to the tent, this little troll-like hairy being who gave me a beautiful gift in the morning, ran up to the tent while I was on the phone, searched through my tent, kept looking up and poking up to see if I was coming over, and I was like, I'm not coming close. I know better. Let you do your thing. Trust, all that. Searched the tent, took off, went over the dune. Had another one, I think I said the mantis came over the dune and just watched me. I had three, I was out there and I had three or four, I didn't talk to them, I don't think. They were probably Zetas or Zeta-like beings, but they had uniforms on, walk up from behind the ridge, where I know they like to park. They told me they like to park back there, and walk up from behind the ridge, and they just stood there. I've had Sasquatches, I've had all kinds of stuff, and then you get into the nature spirits, and nature spirits just come up to you when they're like, oh, you can talk to me. I mean, gnomes will literally run up to you and be like, hey, how are you? You can see me? Yeah. Goblins, yeah, they'll do that. So it just depends on who you're working with, but ETs are very cautious, and they want to build that trust. So you have to be patient, you have to be persistent, you have to repeat, continue to do the work, otherwise you're not going to build it. And a lot of times they're not going to tell you right away what they want you to do. They're going to take baby steps and be like, well, go camping. And they're just going to see if you trust them enough to go camping. And then they might be like, well, go camping again, but don't have a fire. Or go camping again, but go to this spot instead. Or, whatever it is, they'll build trust with you, and part of that trust is listening to what they want. But that doesn't mean put yourself in unsafe situations. Never, ever put yourself in an unsafe situation. And cold camping, I don't think it's something I would do if I wasn't in the Appalachians or in the desert. If I was in the Rockies, if I was on the West Coast where there are wolves and brown bears and all that other stuff, even though I'm like part of me is not worried about them because of who I am. But at the same time, nature is nature. So always make sure you're protecting yourself no matter what. And you can always work that out with them where you say, I want a safe place to camp. The desert is beautifully safe for the most part. But just be conscious of that when you're setting up these meetings, that you need to be safe too. It's not just about their safety, it's about your safety. And your safety is always the priority for you. So good luck. Happy communicating, and maybe you gain something if you're already working with ETs. I've had a lot of people come out and with the spirit art I do, verifying their communications. But remember, if you ask to meet them and you are ready, they will start you on that journey to meet them, and they will give you instructions. It's up to you whether you listen to the instructions and build the trust. And some of them are going to be your teachers, like Kunlai was for me. Others are going to be like Wasp, who I consider a very, very good friend, who just randomly found me walking around the woods. It's up to you to build the trust and to build the communication. And that's how the world moves forward with ETs, is the more people doing the work, talking to them, showing that we are willing to open our arms and embrace them, open our hearts, the more likely they are to come down. And don't get me wrong, they are coming down, whether people are ready or not. But it's up to us to change the narrative from fear to love. So happy communicating, and let me know if you have any questions.